Welcome back. Glory and honor to the Father, Yah, and to Messiah, Yahweh Shai. We are going to continue our study in the book of Revelation, in the sixth church, the Church of Philadelphia. And we're continuing our study in why are we now, how do we know that we're now in Philadelphia? How do we know that we're now in Philadelphia? So as we studied earlier, we saw that there was going to come a time when the Messiah, who started in the book of Revelation in the holy place, was going to go into the most holy place, indicating the Day of Atonement. We saw that the Messiah was opening a door for the people of the era of the Church of Philadelphia. We also saw what the Day of Atonement meant, that it was for Israel. We are also now looking at, we saw what happened with each of the feasts, the Passover, the Feast of Weeks, otherwise known as Pentecost, and then the last feast of the year for the Hebrew, the Feast of the Tabernacles. And between the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of Tabernacles, there's a Day of Atonement. We also saw that in between those two feasts, the Feast of Tabernacle, which is the return of the Messiah, and the Day of Atonement, the Passover, there is not the Passover, and the Feast of Weeks, Between the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of Tabernacles, the Israelite nation was scattered. Jerusalem was destroyed, and the Gentiles scattered the Hebrews. And that's where we finished. Now, we're now going into Daniel, and we saw the four kingdoms that Daniel outlined in giving Nebuchadnezzar the interpretation of his dream. And in those four kingdoms, we saw it start with the ancient kingdom of Babylon and finish with the fourth kingdom of iron. And that when iron was there, that's when the whole thing was going to be destroyed. So we're not at the end yet, because we're still here. And the Messiah's kingdom will be established. In that dream, we saw that there was going to be a kingdom established. So now we're going to see where we are now. And again, we're talking about Philadelphia. And we're going to stay in Daniel because that's going to help us. So now let's go back to Daniel. And we had just finished chapter 2. And we also saw, as we were looking, if you remember, why was not Daniel out with everyone else in Daniel chapter 3, when Nebuchadnezzar had everybody worship the golden image? Well, we saw that Nebuchadnezzar had worshiped Daniel, and he had him and all his people light incense to Daniel. So he wasn't going to have Daniel out there and demand that Daniel worship the golden image, which was a tribute to Nebuchadnezzar. He had everybody else out there, and we know what happened. So now, welcome back, everyone. Hello, Brother Omar. And now we're going back to Daniel. And so we saw that there were four kingdoms. Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar that the first kingdom was going to be representing him. So now we want to see the next three kingdoms, what they represent. So first, before we do that, let's go back to Daniel chapter 7 for a minute. Let's go to 7. Daniel chapter 7, because again, you're going to see the same four kingdoms. You see it in Daniel 2. We already looked at Zechariah chapter 1, where it showed that the reason these four were picked by the Most High to highlight was that these four scattered Israel and Judah. These four, Babylon and the other three, scattered. They were the ones that directly were responsible for scattering Israel and Judah from the land. Okay, so now we go to Daniel chapter 7. Actually, let me go to Daniel chapter 8 first. I'm going to go to 8. Yeah, because we're trying to find out the next three empires. We know the first one was Babylon. Let's let the Bible show us what the next three are. So first, Daniel chapter 8. And we're going to go through this now in more detail. We looked at Daniel chapter 8 a little bit in a previous study, but we're going to look at it in more detail today. So we know the first kingdom was Babylon. So now, in Daniel chapter 8, I'm going to start at verse 1. I'm going to go from verse 1 down to verse 10. So this is Daniel chapter 8. Daniel's going to be shown a vision in Daniel chapter 8. He's going to be shown one in Daniel 7. But for the purposes of us finding out the next three kingdoms, Daniel chapter 8 will tell us. Okay, so Daniel chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. Daniel chapter 8, beginning at verse 1. In the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, I saw in a vision, and it came to pass, when I saw, well, first of all, I want to outline that Daniel chapter 8, where it takes place in the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar. Belshazzar was the last king of Babylon, of the kingdom of Babylon. Belshazzar was king in chapter 5, where he was killed, he was slain, and lost the kingdom in Daniel 5. But here in Daniel 8, Daniel is illustrating that he had this vision in Belshazzar's third year. And so a couple of things about it. First, what we just said in terms of Belshazzar having been slain in chapter 5. Second is that we're looking at chapter 8. So the events that you're looking at in Daniel chapter 8 took place before the events of Daniel chapter 5. Let me say it again. So the events you're looking at here in Daniel chapter 8 actually took place before Daniel chapter 5. And this is important for us to understand, because while we are used to everything in the Bible being in a chronological order, which usually it is, there are times when that's not the case. And this is one of those times. In fact, Daniel chapter 8 was in Belshazzar's third year, and Daniel chapter 7 was in Belshazzar's first year. So Belshazzar is killed in Daniel 5. So chapter 7 and 8 both actually took place prior to Daniel chapter 5. I just want to note that, because it's going to come in handy later on as we're studying the book of Revelation. So here in Daniel chapter 8, the third year of Belshazzar, Daniel says he received a vision. So now in verse 2, and I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was in Shushan, in the palace, which is in the province of Elam. And I saw in a vision, and I was by the river Ulai. So he gives you when it happened, the third year of Belshazzar. He gives you where he was in the nation that's called Elam, which was part of the Babylonian Empire. And he was by a river called Ulai. Okay. Verse 3. Then I lifted up my eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had two horns. The two horns were high, but the one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. So he sees an animal, a ram. The ram had two horns, and they rose up out of his head, but the one that was the highest one came up last. So the first ram, the ram had two horns, one horn, then a higher horn came up last. Verse 4. I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward. Now, there's only four main directions: north, south, east, and west. Four main directions, right? So he saw this ram pushing west. He saw the ram pushing toward the north, and he saw the ram pushing toward the south. So that tells you what direction did the ram come from. All right, there's a little riddle. Where did the ram? It says that he saw this ram, and it was pushing toward the west, it was pushing toward the north, and it was pushing toward the south. So what direction did it come out of? That's right. So this ram, and he's always given this direction in relation to Israel. In relation to Israel. So in relation to the land of Israel, this ram came from a land that was east of Israel. It was east of Israel. Okay. So he saw the ram, verse 4, pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will and became great. So this two-horned ram comes out of the east, and he's pushing north, he's pushing west, and he's pushing south. That means he's gaining territory from these three areas, and he's coming from the east. Now, this continues. Verse 5. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran into him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So the ram came from the opposite direction. It came from the west, and it destroyed. The he-goat came from the west, and it destroyed the two-horned ram. So the he-goat came out the west, and it ran directly from west into the goat came and ran directly into the ram and destroyed it. And in verse 8, therefore the he-goat waxed very great. When he was strong, the great horn was broken, and before it came up four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. So I want you to notice the ram that came from the east was great. It said he became great. But the he-goat that came from the west became very great. So let's take a look at that. See, it's little things that you got to pay attention to in these prophecies. But notice it said here in verse 4, and the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will and became great. Okay. Then in verse 8, therefore the he-goat waxed very great. So the he-goat was greater than the ram. The ram was great, but the he-goat was very great. Okay. And then it said it came with a notable horn between his eyes. And then after it destroyed the ram, the horn was broken. Okay. And became four. Okay. Toward the four winds of heaven. Verse 8. Therefore the he-goat waxed very great. And when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came four notable ones toward the four winds of heaven. So the he-goat's horn was broken, and four horns came up in its place: north, south, east, and west. And it was very great. North, south, east, and west. Okay. Verse 9. Daniel chapter 8, verse 9. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south and toward the east and toward the pleasant land. So out of one of those four horns came a little horn that Daniel describes as exceeding great. So you had great, then you had very great, then you had exceeding great. Now, why was that? Each animal controlled a part of the earth's real estate. right? So the first one had a large territory. It was great. But then the second one took more territory and was very great. But then the third one took over a whole bunch and became exceeding great. So it took over more real estate than the others. Okay. The little horn. Verse 10. And it, that is the little horn, waxed great even to the host of heaven. And it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. So this one not only waxed exceeding great, but it was challenging the leadership of the third heaven. In other words, it was challenging the Most High. Verse 11. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host. And by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. So this one destroyed the Father's sanctuary, was higher than the prince of the host, which is Messiah. And the sanctuary, the place of sanctuary, was cast down by him. So this one was exceeding great, and it was even to the host of heaven, and it was making itself, it said, magnified itself greater than the prince of the host, and destroyed the Father's sanctuary. Okay, so where are we? We have a ram, then we have a he-goat. And out of the he-goat comes this little horn. So we have three powers here. Let's let the Bible, before we go on, let's skip ahead and let the Bible tell us what these three powers are. So in Daniel chapter 8, it's going to tell us what the ram is in verse 20. What does it say? The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Babylon was the head of gold. Therefore, the silver, the next in Daniel's interpretation of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, was the Medes and the Persians. Babylon, the gold, the silver was the Medes and the Persians. Okay, verse 21. Actually, verse 21, right. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. So after the Medes and the Persians came the king of Greece. Okay, so you have Babylon, then you get the Medes and the Persians, which is the silver, and then the brass is Greece. Okay, the brass is Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So the first king of the Greek Empire is very well known as Alexander the Great. The first king of the Greek Empire is Alexander the Great. Now, his kingdom was broken and divided into four. And the four kings that was all part of Alexander the Great's empire were divided into north, south, east, and west. Now, one more thing about this little horn. Let's go back to Daniel chapter 8 and verse 9. One more thing about the little horn. In verse 9, it says, out of one of them, that is, out of one of the horns, north, south, east, and west, came forth a little horn, and it waxed great toward the south, and toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. Again, there's only four directions. What direction did the little horn come out of? It waxed great toward the east, toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. So that's right. So the little horn comes out of the north. So the little horn, out of the four divisions that was Alexander the Great's empire, comes out of the north. Okay, comes out of the north. Now, the four generals, which is who it was. Alexander the Great died before he was 33 years old. He started conquering nations when he was 19. Historically speaking, he is considered a military genius. And of course, he was ruthless. And so but he died young. He died before he was 33 years old. He might have been 32 when he died. So his 4 generals killed the rest of his family and took over the kingdom. The names of the 4 generals are Lysimachus, Cassandra, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. Ptolemy was king of the south. Lysimachus, king of the west. Cassandra, king of the east. And Seleucus, king of the north. So out of Seleucus's part of the empire came the little horn out of the north. Now, let's go back and let them tell us who these people are again. Again, beginning at Daniel chapter 8, verse 20, and going down from verse 20 down to verse 25. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper in practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. So we have Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece. It never named the 4th one. It didn't name him. It just said he's a little horn. It just said he comes out of the north. It just said he's going to have very great power. He's going to destroy the mighty and the holy people, us. And didn't name who he was, though. So we got to do is find in the Bible what kingdom came out of the north and came after Greece and laid hands on the chosen people and scattered them. Because remember, all 4 of these have in common that they scattered Israel and Judah. So we need to know who scattered Israel and Judah, who came after Greece, right? And who is that little horn? Okay, y'all say it's wrong. I think you're right. Let's first go to Luke. Let's go to the book of Luke. Let's go to the book of Luke. And let's go to chapter 2 of the book of Luke and establish who that 4th empire is that represents the iron. Not only that, if you recall from Daniel's vision that he interpreted for Nebuchadnezzar, the iron went from the legs all the way into the feet. So this 4th empire is alive and well today. It's alive and well today. And it's the last one before the whole statue, if you recall. A stone cut without hands destroyed the whole thing by hitting the statue in the feet. Remember? So it hit the feet of iron and clay, the iron being the 4th empire. So let's take a look here. Luke chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. And it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made by Cyrenius when Cyrenius was governor in Syria. Now, we know who the 4th one is. Caesar Augustus. If you don't know who Caesar is, he was the emperor of Rome. And not only that, the Bible said it waxed very great. Caesar said the whole world should be taxed. For Caesar to make a decree, a king, right, an emperor, to say the whole world should be taxed, it tells you they control the whole world. Does that make sense, y'all? If an emperor is going to say, I'm going to tax the whole world, and they start to obey him, that means he controls the whole world, right? Because he says, I want the whole world to be taxed. Okay, so let's go down, Luke chapter 3. Luke chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Luke chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. Now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, and Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, and his brother Philip, tetrarch of Iturea, and of the region of Trichonicus, and Licinius, remember Lysimachus? Same area. And Licinius, the tetrarch of Abilene, Annas and Caiaphas being high priests, the word of Yahweh came to John, the son of Zechariah, in the wilderness. So now we have to say, Rome is the fourth empire. Caesar was the king at that time. They were controlled by Rome. Israel was controlled by Rome, led by a governor appointed by Caesar, Pontius Pilate. It was corrupt. It had two high priests. Right? So here you have Rome, and it's a corrupt system. It controls Israel and Judah. And then Messiah later, as we read already, told us that they would come and destroy the city and lead us captive into all nations. So Rome is the fourth empire. Okay, Rome is the fourth empire. So you have four empires. You have Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Now, out of Rome comes this little horn. Okay, out of Rome comes this little horn. Right? Now, back to Daniel chapter 8, because we're talking about how do we know we're in Philadelphia? How do we know? So now we know who the four empires are. We know that Rome was the fourth one, and there's a little horn that comes out of Rome. Let's go back to Daniel 8 and look at the rest of the chapter. Daniel chapter 8, we stopped at verse 11. All right, we stopped at verse 11. So let's start again at verse 10 with this little horn, and let's go from verse 10 down to verse 14. This is Daniel chapter 8 from verse 10 to verse 14. And it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts and of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down the truth to the ground, and practiced and prospered. And I heard one saint speaking unto another saint, and said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot? And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So 2,300 days in prophetic time is 2,300 years. Numbers 14:34, Ezekiel 4:6. 2,300 evenings and mornings in prophetic time is 2,300 years. So we're being told that the sanctuary, the Day of Atonement, in between the Feast of Weeks and Pentecost and the return of Messiah, would take place at the end of a 2,300-year period. We got this so far? It would take place at the end of a 2,300-year period. We also now understand that this cleansing of the sanctuary means the Day of Atonement. We also understand that when this cleansing of the sanctuary would take place, Rome will be the world power. Okay? We understand all of that so far? There's certain things that fall into place now, because the Bible has shown us the last kingdom is Rome. It also has shown us there's a little horn. This little horn thinks it's going to be greater than the Father Yah and then Messiah. It's going to cast down the place of the sanctuary. It's going to destroy the sanctuary. And then there was a question, two angels talking. Daniel watched the two angels talking, and one said, so how long is this going to be allowed to take place? Moses said, cast the truth to the ground. In other words, lies and deception would be the rule of the day. And so how long will this be allowed to continue? And so the answer was given. It's going to continue until the sanctuary is cleansed. And the sanctuary is going to be cleansed in 2,300 years. Now, what we didn't get and what Daniel did not get at that time is, when does this begin, right? In order to know how we're going to get to the end of it, we need to know where it starts. Where does it start? When does the 2,300 year time period begin? Not only that, I want you to notice, very important, Daniel's a Hebrew. Daniel's a Hebrew of the tribe of Judah. Daniel's in captivity. Daniel's concern, as would be yours and mine, is what about us? It's like now, right? When we find out that the Hebrews are the so-called black men, the descendants of slaves, and whenever children of Yafet find out that, wait a minute, you guys are the Jews, they want to know one thing. They want to know one thing. What about us? Am I lying to y'all yet? Am I lying? That's the first thing they want to know. When they receive the truth of who the true Hebrews are, they say, what about the white people? Where are we? What about us? Right? They worry about themselves, right? Okay. Daniel would have the same sentiment. He's watching the Gentiles destroy Father Yah's sanctuary. He's watching him destroy and take captivity of his people. And he's wondering, what about us? So he needs to know two very important things. What about Israel? And when does this 2,300 year period begin? Because the cleansing of the sanctuary is for Israel. I mean, we understand that. See, the cleansing of the sanctuary is not for everybody. It's for Israel. It wasn't given to the whole earth. It was given to the Aaron priesthood. And now we know Messiah priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, right? So Daniel wants to know, okay, what about us? And when does this start? When we get to the end of these fools. Okay. So now let's continue. Verse 15 and 16. Actually, 15, 16. Let's read from 15 to 18. Okay, let's read from 15 to 18. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning. Then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. As you'll find out in chapter 9, this was Gabriel. Gabriel is the one that's always sent to Daniel. Just remember that. So when Daniel sees an angel and somebody's talking to him in the book of Daniel, it's Gabriel. Okay. And as you would also know, when John the Baptist's father received a vision and was told about John the Baptist being born to his wife, who was it? It was Gabriel. Gabriel is the main messenger that the Father sends through Messiah. Okay, he's the main messenger. So this was Gabriel. You'll find out later. Gabriel is the main messenger. Okay, so when he comes and notice what he said. I think this dude was a bad dude. Well, first of all, Gabriel means warrior of Yah. Warrior of the Most High. That's what Gabriel means. Gabriel means warrior of the Most High. That's what it means. Okay. Gabe is warrior. And so he's Gabriel, warrior of the Most High. So no, he comes, and let's go to Luke real quick before I just got to show you all this. This boy is bad news, right? For the heathen. He's bad news, period. Okay. So let's take a look at it in Luke chapter 1. Gabriel's a bad man. Luke chapter 1. So Zechariah, I'm going to begin at verse 5. This is Luke chapter 1. I'm going to read from verse 5 down to verse 19. I have to. I'm sorry. But Luke chapter 1 from verse 5 to verse 19, you got to see this story. Y'all got to see who we dealing with, man. There was in the days of Herod, the king of Judah, a certain priest named Zechariah of the course of Abia. And his wife was of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. So she was of the daughters of Aaron. Husband was Aaronic priest. Verse 6. And they were both righteous before Yahweh, walking in all the commandments and ordinances of Yahweh, blameless. And they had no child, because that Elizabeth was barren, and they both were now well stricken in years. And it came to pass that while he executed the priest's office before Yahweh in the order of his course, according to the custom of the priest's office, his lot was to burn incense when he went into the temple of Yahweh. So everybody had a job from Aaron's priesthood. Some were the high priest, right? Some were to offer sacrifices, and some were to light incense. His job, his part of the priesthood was to light incense. Okay, so he was to light incense. Verse 10. And the whole multitude of the people were praying without at the time of incense. And there appeared unto him an angel of Yahweh standing on the right hand of the altar of incense. Brethren, question. Where in the sanctuary, and I'm going to give you three choices. This one, I'm going to give you three choices. Where in the sanctuary is the altar of incense? Is the altar of incense in the main court by the altar of sacrifice? Is the altar of incense in the holy place? Or is the altar of incense in the most holy place? Is it in the court where the altar of sacrifice is? Is it in the holy place? Or is it in the, right, it's in the holy place. Thank you, Brother Man. So when you walk in, you're walking out of the courtyard at the altar of sacrifice, and you walk in the holy place, you're going to see to your right, a table of showbread. You're going to see to your left, 7 golden candlesticks. You're going to see in front of you a door that leads to the most holy, of which nobody goes in there except the high priest once a year. And in front of that door, there's the altar of incense. Now, this angel was standing on the right hand of the altar of incense. He's standing on the right hand of the altar of incense. So here, Zechariah walks in. He's not expecting to see anybody in there. It's not like a crowd goes in there. So he walks in to the holy place, and what he sees must have scared the life out of him. Would have scared me. He walks in, and there's somebody standing there at the altar of incense. Verse 12. And when Zechariah saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. Oh, yes. But the angel said unto him, Fear not, Zechariah, for thy prayer is heard. And thy wife Elizabeth shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name John, or Yakana. And thou shalt have joy and gladness, and many shall rejoice at his birth. For he shall be great in the sight of Yahweh, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. And he shall be filled with the Holy Ghost even from his mother's womb. Now, let me ask you all another quiz question. Are you ready? What people in Israel were ordained to never drink wine or strong drink? What people? That's right. Under the Nazirite vow, you drank neither wine nor strong drink. Under the Nazirite vow. Okay. And this man would be a Nazirite from the womb. See, generally, a Nazirite is under a vow. Generally, it's a limited time. The Father doesn't require you to be a Nazirite for your life. But this man, he was born a Nazirite in the tribe of Levi. Let me just say something to you. There's going to come a time where you and I cannot drink wine. And it's not like it's going to be a command for you not to drink wine. You're not going to want to, because of the mission that you're on. When you're on a mission for the Most High, you ain't got no time to get drunk. This man was born into this mission. John, okay? It's all right, Pastor King. It ain't time yet. Don't worry. When the time comes, it will be shown you. Don't worry. When the time comes, it's going to be shown you. Okay, so now let's go verse 15. Okay? He shall be great in the sight of Yahweh, and shall drink neither wine nor strong drink. He shall be filled with the Holy Ghost, even from his mother's womb. And many of the children of Israel shall he turn to Yahweh their Most High. He shall turn many of who? The children of Israel to Yahweh. Okay, verse 17. And he shall go before him in the spirit and power of Eliah. That's Elijah. To turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the disobedience to the wisdom of the just, to make ready a people prepared for Yahweh. To make ready. So we've read that in Malachi. So we know now Malachi has a dual meaning. It was this one, and then there's another one to come. We'll talk more about that later. But first, let's continue. Now you're going to see who Gabriel is. Verse 18. And Zachariah said unto the angel, whereby shall I know this? For I am an old man, and my wife is well stricken in years. What you got the nerve to tell this angel? Verse 19. And the angel answered, said unto him, I am Gabriel, that stand in the presence of Yahweh, and I am sent to thee to show thee these glad tidings. I got this good news for your butt, and you gonna question me? He said, I am Gabriel. And the angel, any angel is more powerful than any man, right? But he's not just angel. He said, I stand in the presence of Yahweh. Now, wait a minute. There's only two angels that stand in the presence of Yahweh. You know, the two that's represented on the mercy seat. They're facing each other. You remember, right? In the mercy seat, they're facing each other. He said, I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of Yahweh. Like, what? I came here to give you good news, and you're going to be questioning me? Bad. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. So now we know who Gabriel is. He's a bad man. Go back to Daniel chapter 8. Daniel chapter 8. Okay, Daniel 8. Now, verse 16. Back to Daniel 8, verse 16. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. So there's two beings there. There's somebody standing on the river Ulai. And there's Gabriel. Because the voice came from between the banks of a river is on the river. Y'all see that? So if I say something is between the banks of a river, the river only has two banks, right? There's one on one side and one on the other side, and the river in the middle. He said, between the banks of Ulai, he said, a man's voice he heard. And the voice between the banks said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So Messiah did not talk directly to Daniel. Instead, he sent a messenger and he said, Daniel, he said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. There's always a messenger. Did you notice that? The revelation of the Messiah, which Yah gave unto him to show unto his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bear witness, right? So the messenger was John, who received the message from a messenger, the angel, who received the message from the chief messenger, Messiah, who received the message from the Father. So here, Messiah did not talk to Daniel directly. Instead, he said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. Just like in Revelation 1. Give this man this message for the revelation of the Messiah. That's right. Teach him. That's exactly right. So now, verse 17. So he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid. Gabriel must be some awesome sight. Zechariah was afraid, Daniel was afraid, and John was afraid. Well, John actually saw Messiah himself, right? But man, this Gabriel must be something else, okay? So, and you'll see Gabriel again in Daniel 10. But here in verse 17, so he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. So the cleansing of the sanctuary is also called the time of the end. Do you understand that? The cleansing of the sanctuary is also called the time of the end. Shall be the vision. Okay? Everybody got that? You're going to see that term several places. The time of the end, especially in Daniel. He uses it at least twice. The time of the end. So the cleansing of the sanctuary is going to take place at the time of the end. So we know that the 2300 days, when it comes to its conclusion, is the time of the end. Okay. We're trying to show that we're in Philadelphia. Therefore, that would make Philadelphia the chime of the end. That's right, Stephen Kelly. Them Roman Catholic statues and all them pictures of little chubby babies being angels with little harps in their hand. No, this is Gabriel. This ain't no joke. This ain't no Walt Disney fantasy. This is Gabriel that stand in the presence of Yahweh. Don't mess with him. He's the warrior of Yahweh. Don't mess with him. He's the warrior of Yahweh. Can't nobody deal with him. He's a bad man. Okay. Yeah, he's a bad man. Okay, so now verse 18. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground, but he touched me and set me upright. Verse 19. And he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed, the end shall be. I'm going to make you know what's going to be the last end of the indignation. When this is all over, I'm going to show you how this is going to happen. It's going to be all over. Okay. Now we went through already from chapter 8, from verse 20, where we saw the ram, all the way down to the power that comes out of the king of the north that rules by craft, right? Down to verse 25. We read that already, but we did not read verse 26. So now verse 26, listen carefully. Verse 26 of Daniel chapter 8 is directly related to the 2300 days. Okay, I want to say it again. Verse 26 of Daniel chapter 8 that Gabriel is about to tell Daniel about is directly related to the 2300 days. And also, therefore, Daniel's looking for two things. Where is Israel? And when does this thing start? Because he knows it's a long time. Okay, when does this start? And where is Israel? Okay, verse 26. Daniel 8:26. And the vision of the evening and the morning which was told is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. Now Daniel's sick. He's waiting for the answer here. And Gabriel says, I'm not giving it to you yet. He says, this is true. I'm not giving it to you yet. And why did he say vision of the evening and morning? If you notice in Genesis chapter 1, every day was called what? He said, and the evening and the morning were the first day, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So a day in the Bible represents an evening and the morning. That's a full day. The daylight is 12 hours, and the night is 12 hours. But the whole day as a day, and people get this confused. I've had people try to teach that the Sabbath is only during daylight hours. The evening and the morning is a day. Okay, so when the Bible says 2,300 days, if you were to look up that translation in the Hebrew, it would say evenings and mornings, which is why Gabriel said the vision of the evenings and morning that was shown is true. So the vision of the days is true, but shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So Daniel was not given the answer that he was obviously looking for. So let's take a look in verse 27 and see how he reacted to that. In verse 27, I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business, and I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. So when he says none understood it, he wasn't talking about the Medes and the Persians. And he wasn't talking about the Greeks, because that was plainly outlined to him. What he was talking about, though, was what was not given him, the 2,300 days. He said, shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. That's right. It's not for you to know right now, which made him sick. It's like you watching a show and you're looking for the end and it doesn't happen. Frustrating, right? It's like you eating a meal and you know something is coming and all you get is the appetizer and you never get the main course. Right? It's frustrating. My brother was frustrated. But here comes the answer in Daniel chapter 9. Daniel, that's right. It's a cliffhanger. That's right, Stephen Kelly. That's exactly right. Daniel chapter 9. So Daniel 9 begins with Daniel fasting and praying because he's concerned, because he knows Jeremiah prophesied about a 70-year captivity in Babylon. And so he's fasting and praying because it's coming to the end and he ain't seeing nothing. And then Gabriel came and they showed him nothing. So he's a little concerned. And he's fasting and praying. And he's doing as we should do, confessing his sins and the sins of his people. He's doing what we should do, confessing his sins and the sins of his people. That's called repentance. Confessing his sins and the sins of his people. In fact, let's take a look at it. Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9. And he's praying, and let's go down to verse 20. Let's go down to verse 20 of Daniel chapter 9, because we're going to get the answer to all of this in Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9, beginning at verse 20, what does Daniel say he was doing? And whiles I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before Yahweh my Most High for the holy mountain of my Most High. So he was confessing his sin and the sins of his people, and presenting his supplication. That's his application. That's his request to the Father for the holy mountain. That is for Israel. The holy mountain is Israel of Yah. Okay. So that's what he was doing. This is how we repent. You want to know how to repent? Confess your sin in the sin of your people. Somebody might say, well, what's the sin of my people? Well, what is the sin of your people? Who are you? Are you a Hebrew by blood? What's the sin of your people? Right? You know your sin. What's the sin of your people? If you're a Hebrew by blood. If you're not a Hebrew by blood and you want to be one of the ones among the Hebrews, what is your sin? And the sin of your people. Everybody should know. See, the people that got to guess about what their sin is and the sin of people are people that are in willful ignorance. And people that are in willful ignorance are going to get what people in willful ignorance get. That's right. We were serving other gods and we disrespected the God of heaven. And we personally have broken his covenant. Am I lying yet? We personally have broken his covenant. And it doesn't matter which of the law you broke. I mean, you could be specific if you want to, because you know specifically what you're doing. But all of us have sinned. So we've broken the covenant of Yah, and our people broke the covenant of Yah. And for that, we were placed into slavery. That's our sin. If you're the children of Yafet or the children of Ham, you know you have sold the children of Israel into slavery. You know you have enslaved Yah's chosen people. You have done it. Aside from your own sin, you have enslaved Yah's people. Your people have enslaved Yah's people. See? There you go, right? Okay. Now, he was doing this. Now, verse 21. Daniel chapter 9, verse 21. And again, remember what Daniel needs. He needs when is this 2,300 years coming? And where's Israel in all this? Okay. Verse 21. Yea, whiles I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touch me about the time of the evening oblation. Many things here. Gabriel is an angel that's described as a man. And he was flying. Now, one thing I want y'all to understand, did not the Messiah say that we would be as the angels in the resurrection? Didn't he say that? He said, you're going to be as the angels. So if we're going to be as the angels in the resurrection, we will be able to fly. Does that make sense, y'all? Somebody said, well, how do you know we're going to fly? Well, what did Gabriel do right here? He said he was being caused to fly swiftly. It wasn't like he had to catch a flight. He flew from standing in the presence of Yah. He flew to Daniel on an urgent mission from the Father. Okay, so we'll be as the angels, which means we will be able to fly when we're resurrected. We'll have the ability as Gabriel did. And they call Gabriel a man. So Gabriel has a man-looking body, but he can fly. Of course, much greater than what we look like. But he was able to fly. Now, wait a minute. Let me get a second witness in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Messiah said we'll be as the angels. Okay. Isaiah says something very important also. Isaiah about flying. Isaiah chapter 60, I believe that's what I'm looking for. Chapter 60. Yes, Isaiah chapter 60. And let's begin at Isaiah chapter 60. And I'm going to read verse 8. That's all we need. Isaiah 60, verse 8. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 8. Notice what it says. Our second witness. Who are these that fly as a cloud and as doves to their windows? And if you read Isaiah 60, he's talking about the Hebrews. He said, you're going to be having the Gentiles converted unto you. And he says, who are these that fly like birds? And then Gabriel flew to Daniel. So we'll look like men and have the ability to fly. There you go. Not only that, one more witness. Paul says, we shall be caught up together to meet Messiah where? On the top of a mountain? Where? We're going to be caught up together to meet Messiah where? Where are we going to meet him? Going to be caught up together, the Bible says, to meet Messiah. And this is 2 Thessalonians. Yes, in the air. That's right. Who said that? In the air. That's right, Brother Stephen Kelly. In the air. Let's look at it. 2 Thessalonians this is our third witness. 2 Thessalonians, or is it 1 Thessalonians? I always get them confused. Let me just see. It's 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians, verse 17 of chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. What does it say? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Messiah. So we'll actually have to be caught up into the air. We have to get there some kind of way. We have to get up there some way. So we have Gabriel and Daniel showing us he could fly. Messiah telling us we'll be like the angels. We have Isaiah being shown the remnant people flying. And then Paul testifying to the Thessalonians that we'll be able to fly up to meet the Messiah in the air. So we will have the ability to fly. Praise the Most High. Back to Daniel chapter 9. Everybody got that? So we can now have proof from the Bible, Paul, Daniel, as well as Isaiah and Messiah telling us we're going to be as angels. that we will be able to fly. Okay, so here, Daniel chapter 9. So Gabriel was being caused to fly to Daniel swiftly. Daniel chapter 9, verse 22. Going to read verse 22 and 23. So now Gabriel is going to talk to Daniel again and give him some information that Daniel needs. This is Daniel chapter 9, verse 20, actually 21 and 22. Yep. Actually, I'm sorry, we read 21. Well, let's read 21, 22, and 23. This is Gabriel now. He's going to be talking to Daniel. Daniel chapter 9, 21, 22, and 23. Yea, whiles I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. And he informed me and talked with me and said, O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. See, he said, shut up the vision. But now he says, I'm come forth to give you skill and understanding. Verse 23, at the beginning of thy supplications, the command came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Gabriel, the warrior of Yah, says to Daniel, you are greatly beloved. Woo, man, that's powerful, isn't it? You are greatly beloved, brother. He ain't talking to him like he did to Zechariah. I am Gabriel that stand in the presence of Yah. And because you doubting me, you ain't going to be able to talk until this child is born because you doubting what I say. Nope, he ain't talking to Daniel that way. He said, Daniel, when you started praying, when you started confessing your sins and the sins of your people, the commandment came, go. And I went, and here I come. I'm here, right? And he said, thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. So now we understand what he's about to explain to Daniel is the 2,300-year vision. He said, the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So now he said, understand the matter and consider the vision. Let's look back at that 2,300 years, Daniel, and the cleansing of the sanctuary, Daniel. Let's explain that now. Okay. The first part of his question would be Israel. So here, verse 24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So, of the 2,300-year period, or 300 days, 70 weeks, the word determined means separated or cut off. 70 weeks are cut off for Israel. And in that 70 weeks, there's a mission for Israel. It says to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So 70 weeks is 7 weeks times 7 days in a week. Can you carry the one, Brother Castle King? Is 70 weeks times 7 days in a week, Brother Castle King. How many days is that? It's 70 weeks times 7 days in a week. So you have 490 years. So out of the 2,300-year period, the first 490 years of that is for Israel. And it's for Israel to get ready to meet Messiah. And it's for Israel to get ready to meet Messiah. Okay, so a couple things we need to understand here. This is a probationary period, if you will, for Israel as a nation. Number one. Number two, in this probationary period, the Messiah would appear. Okay, so there's two things here. There's a probationary period for Israel to be ready to meet Messiah. And in that period, Messiah will appear. So within the 490, exactly, he put us on timeout. For 490 years, You're getting ready to meet Messiah. In other words, why were they in captivity? Because of their sins, because of worshiping other gods. They were in captivity. Okay. And so he's telling them they get a chance to get this right now. And Messiah is going to appear in this time. So 490-year period. Okay. Okay. So now verse 25, when does the 490 years begin? Okay. All right. Got it. Where does the 490 years start? When do we get this? When does this countdown begin? When does this countdown begin? Verse 25. Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to build, to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah, the prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. Now, people get this confused. There were multiple decrees given, which we'll show in a moment. But the first 2 decrees, at least, were not for the restoration of the building of Jerusalem. The first 2 decrees were for the restoration of the building of the temple. First, Cyrus, the Persian king, said, go build the temple. And then Darius came after him and said, because they were stopped from the building of the temple. And then Darius came and said, no, continue to build the temple. And they built the temple under those 2 decrees. It was a third decree that caused them to not only finish the temple, but to start building. Notice he said, the wall shall be built again, the street shall be built again, and the wall. So when they're building the wall, is to rebuild Jerusalem. So you're looking for the decree that tells them to rebuild the wall. All right, everybody got that so far? So when you're rebuilding the wall, you're establishing the city all over again. So now Jerusalem was destroyed. They were first allowed to go and rebuild the temple. So let's go to Ezra. Ezra, the book of Ezra. Chapter 6. Ezra chapter 6. And I'm going to read, let's see. Okay, Ezra chapter 6, I'm going to read verse 14 and 15 of Ezra chapter 6. Verse 14 and 15. Okay, watch closely these decrees. Okay. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. So these 2 prophets, as we know, they have their own books, these 2 Hebrew Israelite prophets in the Old Testament. And these 2 prophets were talking about what was going on here with the rebuilding of the temple. Okay. So they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. And they builded and finished it according to the commandment of the Most High of Israel, according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Artaxerxes, king of Persia. Verse 15. Notice that there were 3 kings here. There is Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. Okay. So verse 15. And this house was finished on the 3rd day of the month of Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king. So the house was finished under Darius. It said here, the 6th year of Darius. Okay, so there were 3 kings, Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. In the first 2, that is Cyrus and Darius, Jerusalem was not finished. The temple was finished. It says the house was finished. That is the house of Yahweh was finished at Jerusalem under Darius. That means there was another decree under Artaxerxes that had nothing to do with the house. Okay, does that make sense, y'all? Everybody got that so far? So it says the house of Yahweh was finished under Darius. And there was a decree from Cyrus and Darius. And under Darius, they finished the house. But there was a 3rd decree from Artaxerxes. Well, let's go to Nehemiah. And let's look at Nehemiah chapter 1. let's see. I've actually Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2, let's go from verse 1. Let's go from verse 1 down to verse 7. Okay, Nehemiah chapter 2 from verse 1 to 7. That is Nehemiah chapter 2, 1 to 7. And it came to, and remember the third king was Artaxerxes. Okay, so in Nehemiah chapter 2, and it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it unto the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. Wherefore the king said unto me, why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid, and said unto the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? Then the king said unto me, for what dost thou make request? So I prayed to the Most High of heaven, and I said unto the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant have found favor in thy sight, that thou wouldest send me unto Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. And king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, for how long shall thy journey be? And when wilt thou return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I sent him, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said unto the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that they may convey me over till I come into Judah. So King Artaxerxes gave him permission to go and rebuild the city. Now, that wasn't the decree, though. The decree came in Ezra chapter 7. The decree came in Ezra chapter 7, and let's go from, let's see. Ezra chapter 7. I'm going to begin in Ezra chapter 7. Let's see. I'm going to read. I'm going to read it from I'm going to read verse 1, but then I'm going to skip down to verse 6, because we don't need the son of the son of the son of at this point, right? So I'm going to read verse 1 of Ezra chapter 7. I'm going to skip down to verse 6 and read from verse 6 to verse 13. So this is Ezra chapter 7, verse 1, and then from verse 6 to verse 13. Everybody got that? Ezra chapter 7. This is the decree. Okay. So he gave the decree. They just didn't act on it. And then finally, Nehemiah is getting frustrated because they got the decree and nothing happened. So now he goes to the king and says, can you send me? So he wasn't originally the one that was the captain of rebuilding the city, but he became that because he got frustrated and the king sent him. Okay. So now verse 1. Now after these things, in the reign of Artaxerxes, king of Persia, Ezra the son of Sariah, the son of Azariah, the son of Hilkiah, we can skip down to verse 6. Then Ezra went up from Babylon, and he was a ready scribe in the law of Moses, which Yahweh Most High of Israel had given. And the king granted him all his requests according to the hand of Yahweh, his Most High, that was upon him. And there went up some of the children of Israel, and of the priests, and of the Levites, and the singers, and porters, and Nethinims, and to Jerusalem in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king. And he came to Jerusalem in the 5th month, which was in the 7th year of Artaxerxes the king. And upon the 1st day of the month began he to go up from Babylon unto the 1st day of the 5th month. He came to Jerusalem, according to the good hand of his Most High upon him. For Ezra had prepared his heart to seek the law of Yahweh and to do it, and to teach Israel statutes and judgments. Now, this is the copy of the letter that King Artaxerxes gave unto Ezra the priest, the scribe, even the scribe of the words of the commandments of Yahweh and of his statutes to Israel. Artaxerxes, king of kings, unto Ezra the priest, a scribe of the law of the Most High of heaven, perfect peace, and at such a time I make a decree that all they of the people of Israel and of his priests and Levites in my realm, which are minded to go of their own free will to go to Jerusalem, go with thee. So there's the decree. Okay, it was in the 7th year of Artaxerxes in the 5th month. Now, for our purposes, the 5th month generally speaking. The first month is April, right? Does that make sense? The first month is April. The fifth month is September. Does that make sense, yo? I mean, no, August. I'm sorry. April, May, June, July, August. August. So the fifth month is August. So in August of a particular year, a decree was made for them to go up to Jerusalem. If you look up Artaxerxes and you look up his seventh year, that was 457 BC. So the 2300 year period begins in 457 BC. No, the first month is April, Brother Joe. That's when spring begins. Late March, early April is when spring. Spring in the Hebrew is when the year begins. May, you're already in spring, but the spring begins from sometime after March 20th into April is when spring begins. So you go generally, it's March. So, it's April. So now you have April, May, June, July, August, 5 months. Sometimes it starts at the end of March, depending on the sun sets and rises and the moon phases, but generally it's the beginning of April. Okay, generally it's the beginning of April. So you have 5 months, brings you to August of 457 BC, when Artaxerxes' decree went out to restore and build Jerusalem. And then later on, he sends Nehemiah to oversee that rebuilding of the wall. Everybody got me so far? And this is something you'd have to look up, the year 457 BC, okay? Artaxerxes in the year 457 BC. So now, here's a little bit more complicated math, Brother Castle King. I am so sorry, but this is a little bit more complicated math. So I got to show you, this is a little bit more complicated. You definitely need a calculator. I need a calculator. So you got to carry the one. So here, you want to find out what year is the time of the end. You want to find out what year is the time of the end, right? Why are we in Philadelphia, right? So now you take 2300, 2300. Subtract from 2300, 457. That's what you do. You take 2,300 days, right? That's at the end of it's the time of the end. And so you subtract from 2,300 days, 457. I had to do it on my calculator. So don't feel so bad. Don't do it by hand. Subtract 2,300, subtract 457 from 2,300. Where do you end up, brethren? Where do you end up? 2,300 from 457. 1843. And why do I say, even though it's 1843, it's really, because we're dealing in BC, right? And AD, it's really 1844. Why do I say that? If you get 1843, why do I say it's 1844? Because, right, superstar, because there's no such thing as year zero. On the mathematical number line, there's a zero. But in terms of BC and AD, you go from BC1 to AD1. There's no year zero. Does that make sense, y'all? So you go from BC1 to AD1. You don't go, there's no year zero. So you go 457 all the way down to 1, and then you start at 1 and go forward. So now that would take you to 1844. Does that make sense? So that would tell us a couple of things. The time of the end started in 1844. Are we past 1844 now? So the cleansing of the sanctuary would begin in 1844. Actually, it began in 1843 and should be completed by 1844. So it would be cleansed. So it should be completed by 1844. And we'll find out why it's not, but I think we can understand we're in the time of the end. The cleansing of the sanctuary took place in Philadelphia. So here we are at the cleansing of the sanctuary, past 1844. Now you understand why we're in Philadelphia? Everybody got that? So we're past 1844, where the sanctuary would be cleansed. Philadelphia is the cleansing of the sanctuary. The door was opened. And here we are, still here in 2024. 180 years later. 180 years later, here we are. And so the sanctuary is not cleansed yet, but we're at the time of the end, and we're in Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is the time of the end. I just wanted to prove that, right? So Philadelphia is the time of the end, and we're now in Philadelphia. Does that make sense, y'all? Because the Messiah has not come back yet, right? We're in Philly. We're in Philly. So now, we're not going to go into it now, but I just wanted us to understand how we got there. So it took a little study, right? Y'all see that. But you also saw that we took our time, went through all the stuff, and we get to 1844. We get to the Bible telling us that's when the end shall be, at the cleansing of the sanctuary. And we got to the cleansing of the sanctuary when Gabriel tells, right? Gabriel tells Daniel, you got 490 years. Now, one more. Here we go. So now Israel has 490 years to get its act together. So we now take 490 and subtract 457. Take 490 and subtract 457. And remember, there's no year zero. That's the rule. There's no year zero. There's no year zero. So what year are we at? There's no year zero. Subtract 490. Man, he's right. It is 33, but that's not the year we're looking for. There's no year zero. So you got to add a year. There's no year zero. So you add a year, right? So it's AD 34. Does that make sense, George? That's right. It's AD 34. So from the commandment of Artaxerxes, they had until AD 34 to be prepared to meet the Messiah. That's no problem. No. This is how we learn. AD 34. So that's important. We're going to need that later. But for now, we understand 1844, the sanctuary should have been cleansed. And we understand that at the cleansing of the sanctuary, the Bible tells us it's the time of the end. And that we understand that the time of the end in the cleansing of the sanctuary, the most holy place is open. The door is open. And we see that in Philadelphia. We understand that Philadelphia is the time of the end. Philadelphia is the cleansing of the sanctuary. Philadelphia is now, because we're still here. Next, as we continue our study, we're going to see why did it not all finish in 1844. And you guys already know that, but we have to go through it step by step in a study so that we have somebody that can come behind us and look at it. And then you yourselves could do it and you could give it to somebody else, but we have to do it step by step. You all already know why there's a delay, but we need to show it from the word of the Most High. Okay, so we'll show it from the word of the Most High. So we understand Philly is the time of the end. Philly is where we live now. Philly is the Day of Atonement is in there. And we're dealing with that right now. Okay. So now we're going to get more into that. In our next thing, we'll get more into that. Like I said, we're going to take our time with Philly since this is where we are now. There's a lot in there concerning us. This is very powerful. We're not reading about some people in the future or some people in the past. We are now reading about us. Isn't that something? We're reading about us. So we're going to continue this and go into all of this later. Okay. All right. Very good. We're going to need Daniel 9 some more. We're going to need some more Daniel 9. So we'll come back. We only talked about when the 2,300 years began, but there's some other stuff we got to look at. Okay. There's some other stuff we got to look at. Why is AD 27 so important? Why is AD 27 so important? We know that the end of the 490 years is AD 34. Why is AD 27 mean anything? We'll talk about that. All right. We'll talk about that as we continue our study in the book of Revelation. And we're now in Philly. And we're going to stay in Philly for a minute. Okay. Because Philly is the foundation of many things going forward, particularly 6th and 7th trumpets, 6th and 7th seals. And we'll look at that. May the Most High bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. We went a little longer today, brethren, but as you can see, we needed to. Praise the Most High. Till we meet again. Shalom.